First thing we need to do is we need to go download the P4 client. Link will be down in the description for this. So once we get here, go ahead and select whichever operating system you're using. I'm using Windows. Windows 64 is the only platform that they have. And then select the version. I'm going to select the EXE and then go ahead and download it. Once it's done downloading, let's go ahead and open up the EXE. It's going to default to having all 4 checkboxes marked there. Go ahead and keep all 4 of them there. The first one's going to be the main one, which is the visual client that we're going to use to interact with the server. The second one is a merge and differentiating tool that is much needed when you're trying to compare 2 files or the history of visions, things of that nature. And then the administrative tool, we need this one to make users and set security levels and create the depots and all that good stuff. And then the command line client will allow us to be able to do some administrative tasks from this, but most of your administrative tasks should be done on the Helix server, as this generally will only update the client side permissions and not the server side permissions. So all 4 of these checked. Make sure you have it in whichever directory you want to store it in. Select next. In this one, let's go ahead and include the server that we want to do, which is the server that you created in the last one. And if you are joining a server and not creating your own server, you don't have to have your own server in order to do this. If you're joining somebody else's server, then you will need to enter the correct server properties for that. So go ahead and enter the IP address or the website address included with the port at the end, and then your username. And then down here, you will have to set your text editing application. For me, that's going to default to Notepad. It should find Notepad for you as well. If you want to use something different like Notepad++ or anything like that, then find it, browse it on a computer, and then do that. And once you have that all set, go ahead and hit next. Go ahead and click install, give it permissions. All right, that didn't take long at all. So go ahead and it's finished. Get the little checkbox here. You can start P4V. There's some other options here, the release notes, user guides, license, things of that nature. I suggest especially license might be worth reading. Go through the P4V users guide. I'm going to go over some common tasks that we're going to do here. I'm not going to get too in depth. So if you want to get very proficient at using the P4 software, then I suggest you read the user guide. Go ahead and I've got mine. Select to start P4V. Go ahead and hit exit. Once this opens up, you should be presented with a screen relatively close to this. Your server ID should pop in there. I did do a little bit of testing of this, and you will need the SSL colon IP address or the domain name, and then colon port number. Username, just match what you put in the server. So for me, I put my name and that was it. So workspace, just leave that empty for now. And after you hit OK, you're going to get presented with this fingerprint required. It's going to tell you that it doesn't understand. It's going to give you a warning somebody could be intercepting your connection. It just doesn't recognize the fingerprint of the public key being sent over the server. Yes, we trust this, and go ahead and select connect. Once you do that, you're going to be presented with the Perforce password required login screen. So go ahead and enter your password here that you created earlier. It's worth noting, if you do have a little bit of problem here logging in your server, if you keep getting timed out, I did have to go back into my hosting service, which for me, I chose Aorus. I went back in there and I did have to still enable the port, TCP port within Aorus to enable the 1667. It still does need to be done in UFW like we did on the server as well, but I had to do mine in particular for Aorus. So if you're doing that as well, make sure that if you're having the issue, just go back and enable the port on your server's firewall setting. And once you've done that, then you're going to be in the screen right here. All right, well, if you're installing your own Perforce server, then let's go ahead and add a couple new configurations. This first one, these are security reasons. And so what we need to do is we need to make sure that new users cannot create their own account. You don't want people just getting your IP address or domain name and coming in and just creating themselves their own account. Granted, they wouldn't have really any permissions, but that's just not something you want to deal with. So let's disable public user account creation. The commands for these will be down in the description. So just go ahead and copy it and paste this first one. So P4 configure set dm.user.noautocreate equals 2. hit enter. There you go. For server any, configuration variable set to 2. And then the last one that comes up here, let's go paste that. P4 configure set run.users.authorize equals 1. What this does is it disables unauthorized viewing of your user list and emails. So this way nobody can just come in and see which users are there unless they already have an account. So these are the final security settings that we're going to set here in the host. So hit enter, and there we go. We can see confirmation that is set. So now we can exit out of this, and let's head back into the P4V client. Now you can see that we're back in here, and on the left hand side we've got depot and we've got spec. You can see we're in the depot tab. This is going to be the list of all the depots you have. Your depot is going to be your primary hub for all the different projects you have. Over here, we also got a workspace tab. You'll see this in just a little bit when we create some workspaces, but we don't want this depot tab. This is just a default localized classic style depot. We want to make something a little bit different. So what we need to do is come up here to tools, select administration. And this, again, this is only if you are creating the server yourself. Administration should really only be needed. You can come in here if you're not an administrator, check a couple things like maybe change your user password, things like that. If you're not an administrator, this is how you would do it here. But if you're the super user, you could have to come in here. If you didn't do the configuration we did in the server video, then you'd have to come in here. This would actually, by clicking administration, this would create you as a super user. It would say this user is now going to be a super user, and then you have to give it permissions to do so. So when you come in here, you will see on the left hand side, these are the list of all your connections. If you've got multiple servers that you connect to, you'll see them posted over here. Or if you have multiple names, all your users, you should be able to see listed over in here. Again, this will be the list of all the users and the various groups that you have. We'll get in a little bit more detail about this later when we create a couple user accounts. And then permissions, again, the spec account is for administrative uses only. Your users should never see that. You can see here super. So if I came in as a normal user, I would not see any of these in the P4V client. So come over here to depots now. And if we select the depot, called depot, and right click on it, like I said, we don't want this, so let's go ahead and just delete it. It's going to say, are you sure you want to delete it? Select yes, and there we go. It is gone from our scene. So now we actually do want to create a depot while we're in here. So if we go file, new, and depot, let's give the depot a name. Now, generally speaking, when creating a depot, you can create multiple streams within a depot. You should always have just one project for each depot. As far as I'm aware, you can have an unlimited amount of depots that you want, including streams to it. But once you start adding multiple projects to a single depot, organizing it is going to be difficult at best. So one project, one depot is the best way to go with that. So select OK. And then you're going to be presented with this pop-up window right here. You can change most of these settings if you want, add a description. But the most important spot here is going to be the depot type. That one we just deleted was actually what I was saying here. It is a local depot. What we want is the stream. It defaults to stream. This is going to be the most flexible, user-friendly one that we want to be able to use. These other ones are a little bit more technical. You can learn those in time on your own. I'm not going to be going over any of these in these videos. But for now, make sure stream is selected. You can change the version file location and the stream depth, etc. I recommend just leaving this all the same because you don't want to have to think too much when you're going through and working in your server. And if you made any changes in here, go ahead and make sure you select apply. And then you see down there in the background on the bottom, you can see it actually processed. Now remember, this is all Git, G-I-T. This is all Git codes just done through P4. They have their own codes, but generally speaking, Git and Perforce, they run the same protocols, which is called Git. All right. So make sure you try to work through all your steps there. So we did apply. Now let's just go ahead and hit OK. And there you go. You can see our new depot right there. So that's all we should have to do right now. We will come back later and create some more users. But for now, let's go ahead and exit the administrative panel. All right, now we're back here in our primary client, and you're going to see depot still there, and we don't see our newly created depot. But if we come up here to refresh, or you can see the shortcut is F5, go ahead and hit that. And there you go. You will see the depot disappear and our new depot will be available there. So you can see the drop down arrow. You select that. There's not going to be anything in there because we haven't added any files yet, which we will do momentarily. But over here on the right hand side, we have a couple tabs already selected. One is file, one is pending. This is going to be all your change list. We'll get in that a little bit later, but you can set this up to kind of be viewed however you want. This file, I usually don't use this file, so I'm going to close that tab. And if you come over here to the plus, now we're going to have a couple extra choices. I like using the stream graph. So if I select that, and it's going to give me the tab up here. What this does, this just kind of gives you, you'll see once we set up some streams for this depot, you're going to see your streams in here, and it's going to be just kind of in a graphical table layout for us right here in the main line. Any of the streams that we have for this depot that's selected right here you'll be able to select those in here, and you'll see a list within here. It'll make a little bit of sense down the road, but for now, that's it. So let's go ahead and move on forward. So now you can see we're in your primary depot. So if we come over here into the stream graph and we right click, you'll see the option to add a new stream. You can also push Control N. When this pops up, you're going to be given some basic information here. So the stream name, traditionally or conventionally, I guess you could say, this first stream is usually called main. I'm going to name mine main because what we need to do is we need to create a main line, which is a stream type we're setting here. And this, as it says, serves as the base or trunk of a stream system. So you can see the arrows here, the green arrows here. We can send out and receive updates onto this main line. This main line is going to be our primary working for our projects. Okay, so give your stream a name. Make sure this first one is set to mainline. We'll go over the other ones a little bit later. You can change some of the other information here. Like if you wanted to put it on a different depot, if you had multiple depots, you can do that here. You'll see it in drop down list. If you don't see it in the drop down list, you can actually browse for it here. Parent view, inherit, keep it all the same. And now we want to uncheck create a workspace, and we want to uncheck populate the mainstream after it's created because we don't want to add any new files to it. And the workspace, we actually want control over it. If we have it create a workspace, it's going to give us some defaults, and you'll see in a little bit why we want a little bit of control over creating a workspace. So make sure those are unselected. Go ahead and select OK. And once it gets done creating the depot for you or the stream for you, you're going to see it pop up here for you. So we got the main branch, and this is what I was talking about earlier, but we have the branch listed right here, and it's within the EVA Core, for me, EVA Core depot. As we move forward, we will add some other streams that will run off of this main. We will do that in just a little bit. However, I'll show you how all that works after we create our workspaces. So there's a couple ways you can create a new workspace. If you simply double click the stream and you click work in stream, since we don't have a workspace, it's telling you that you need a workspace for this. So you can select new workspace there. You can also come over here to your workspaces tab, and where it says no workspace selected, drop it down and select new workspace there as well. I'm just going to right click on here for now and choose new workspace. And the workspace that what pops up here. Now, this is why I wanted more control when creating my workspace, is because you can see here, this is the name that it would have given it. The way this is laid out is this first section here is the username. So I'm logged in as Jesse. So that is the first section there. This next section is the computer or the workstation that I'm currently working on. I haven't given my computer a name yet, but that is this section here. And then the next section is the stream in which this is working for. And then this last section is just a random ID. Conventionally, the way this works is your workspace root, the name of the folder that we create for this, should match your workspace name. It doesn't have to, it's just more or less convention. Let's go ahead. I have a special folder that I will house all my Perforce files in. So in here, I've got Unreal projects. These are all my different Unreal projects, but I've got a special folder here for Perforce. This is where I will house all my source control projects are from within here. So set Perforce, and this is the folder I want to use. So hit select. All right. You can see that it updates my workspace right there, Perforce. Right now, I want to add a slash after this, and this will be the root of my workspace. So I will call this one Jesse underscore, and I'm going to include the name of the project, which I called mine Evo Core. And the reason for this is you can reuse a workspace for multiple streams and depots. So by labeling it like this, I just know that this belongs to me and this is the project that it goes with. With the free version of Perforce, you are given 5 user accounts and a total of 20 workspaces. So that gives everybody roughly, well, that actually gives everybody up to 4 workstations each, which should be more than sufficient. Other places you might need workspaces is, say, if you have just 2 different computers, like you're working on this project from home and then on your free time at work, you're working on it there. So you might want to have a second one. If you're going to do something like that, then go ahead and add another underscore and do like work or home. But for me, I'm fine for that. You should still be able to reuse this workspace, but for me, that is fine. So I will leave it at that. And then the workspace name, this is the name that everybody else that uses a server will be able to see. Again, you can keep it as convention dictates, which would be Jesse Evo Core. And right here for the workspace root, you can see this is on my local computer. If I didn't want my name in there, because I'm not going to have the workspace for anybody else on my personal computer, I can delete that. That's not that big of a deal. So, but I'm just to stick with convention, I will keep it such as that. Right here, you want to make sure that you're set into the correct stream. If you drop this down, usually when you drop this down, when you've got multiple streams in here, you actually won't see it. You'll have to hit the browse button and all your available streams will pop in here. So if I'll show you later, when we redirect this workspace to work into a development stream, we'll have to come in here and do that. So I'll show you that a little bit later. We do want to come over here to the advanced tab. And in this advanced tab, you can see the owner is me because I'm logged in here. You can give this a description if you want, if this is your work computer, home computer, whatever you want right there. But down here, what we want to make some changes, and you don't have to make these changes if you don't want to, but I recommend it, is the first one here is the remove directory. What this does is that, as it says, it deletes any workspace directories when they're empty. Because if you're moving between workspaces, you may end up having some empty directories or folders. So we just wanted to go ahead and remove those empty directories whenever possible. And then the last one right here is on submit. You get a few choices in here. So if you drop down the box, you can see submit all selected files, don't submit unchanged files, or revert unchanged files. What this does, let's say you check out an entire folder structure because you want to just go and work and bounce between a couple files that you're working on. But if you don't make changes to all those files, when you go to submit it, if we're on submit all selected files, even if you didn't make any changes to it, it's going to make a revision to it. So it's going to look like something was changed on that file. And that's not something you really want to do. You only want to make a revision. For one, it saves space on your server, but as well, it's a little less confusing when you go to differentiate 2 files revisions in the past. So we don't want to submit them selected. We only want to do it if they're changed. So I suggest at least at bare minimum, changing it to don't submit unchanged files. But by doing that, it's still going to leave those files checked out within your change list. That means you have to handle the files yourself to get them unlocked and all that. So what I suggest is actually revert unchanged files. So revert, just make sure that we take the file that was checked out and we revert it or restore it back to the state it was before being checked out. You can also revert files, which we may go over a little bit later. You can revert files that you did change and it will go back to the last saved revision on the server. So just select revert unchanged files. And then down here, we can have it defaulted to switch to the new workspace immediately. You can update automatically, get all revisions. Generally speaking, if you're creating a new workspace for an existing server, you can do that and it'll automatically get all the revisions off the server for you. Right now, since we don't have any files in there, there's nothing we could do with it. So I'm just going to leave that deselected for now. Like I said, you can have it selected and then it's just going to pop up and ask you if you want to populate the server now. So I'm going to leave it like that. Switch to the new workspace immediately and go ahead and select OK. And now you can see over here in the workspace tab, you can see we are currently working in this particular workspace, Jesse underscore Evo Core, and it is in the parentheses main. We are in the main branch and you can see that shown here with the little television. This is a stream that we're working in. All right, the last thing we want to do before we populate our project into this workspace and on this depot is we want to create the ignore file. If you remember back in the server, we had a p4 ignore. Now, if you are not the server owner, if you are just joining the server, then this should hopefully already be done for you. But if you did install the server yourself, if you are the administrator of the server, then you want to set this first. We want to be in the root folder. So if we right click on that and we select show in Explorer, when the folder pops up, go ahead and double select this. Now we are in the root of our workspace folder. So right click and go new text document. And I'm going to name this text document .p4 ignore, because that is what we called it in the environment variable when we're setting up our server. Hit enter. And now that we have that, this still won't quite work, because if you remember back in the server, I only set this to be called a p4 ignore. But if you right click on this and select properties, you're going to see this is actually a .txt. And if you check the details of this, you can see this is .p4 ignore.txt. This won't be seen by the server because it has the .txt. So we need to delete that. If you're like me and it doesn't look like it's there, then what you need to do is you need to come up to view, select file name extensions, and now we can see it. So if we change the name of the file, come over here to the very end and just delete the .txt and hit enter. You're going to get a pop-up asking if you want to change file name extension. Yes, we do. And there we go. So now you can see this little icon went away. It doesn't know how to handle this. So if we double click it, it's going to pop up here and asking how we want to handle it. We want to update it with Notepad. Always use this to open P4 ignore and select OK. Down in the description, you'll find a link to a text file where you can copy and paste all of the ignore files that I have in here. The list is just kind of something I came up with over time with help from various people and just generally using the system. Generally speaking, you just don't want files that can be generated at any time. For example, .sln, that is a solution file created by an IDE such as Writer or Visual Studios. We don't need that in there. That can be generated anytime. Same thing with some of these folders. We don't need the intermediate folder. We don't need binaries. We don't need build, any of this other stuff. .vs, this is Visual Studios. .idea, that belongs to Writer. So these are just folders and files that we don't want to version control. So any of these that we have, even if it's in our primary workspace folder structure, the depot will go ahead and ignore everything in this list. So go ahead and save it. All right, now that you're saved, we've got that. And this was important because if you put your project in your workspace and submit it to the depot without the ignore file, all those files that are on the server will not be ignored moving forward. It thinks, oh, well, you intentionally wanted these, so we're going to continue to add these files. So we add the ignore file now, and we will go ahead and set it to the server. So close this out, and then back in P4V, you can see here now within our folder structure, we got the .p4 ignore file in here, and it just shows a little file there. When we hover over it, it says it is not in the depot. So if we select it, you have the option here to add it. You can come up here to actions, mark for add, or right click on it and go mark for add. So whenever we're adding files that weren't originally here, you want to mark for add. It's going to ask which change list you want to send it to. Generally speaking, you're always going to use the default change list. Don't worry about confusing yourself with creating all these different change lists. Just work from your default. It's going to be a lot easier. You don't need to give it a description. And likewise, if you don't ever want to make a different change list, you can tell it not to show this dialog again. I'm going to leave it there just as a reminder. It's just one last safety protocol to go, oh, wait, I don't want to submit it yet. So either way, I'm going to select OK. And now you can see the little plus icon next to there. And if we hover over it, you can see it's in the depot, marked for add in default change list. It's not technically in the depot yet, but it's marked for add to in the change list. So now if we come over here to pending, you can see now we've got this drop down list here, the default change list, and it tells you exactly which file we want to include. We want to include the .p4 ignore from the main branch evil core workspace, and the file type is a text. Now if you go back from the last video when we set the type map for files of how Perforce should handle certain files, now p4 ignore is not one of those files. However, you'll see when we add the project here, we're going to get a list of text and binaries and things like that. That is what the type map ended up doing for us, is it tells Perforce how to read those files. So now let's go ahead and submit this. Again, you can right click on it and click submit. Shortcut is Control S, or if you just select the default workspace, you can come up here and you've got submit. Whenever you make a submission, you see in here in red, write a change list description. You always have to type something, even if it's just one letter, that's all it is, but it is good practice to give a proper description. And then once you have that, you got other options here. Don't worry about it. You can save it for later, but just hit submit. If you hit submit to start this, then just submit it and don't save it. There we go. Your change list is now clear. We come over here and you can see the little green dot on that icon. And if we hover over it, it is now in the depot latest revision of the file, number 1 of 1. And it's in the depot. So there we go. We have that. One last thing we got to do before we wrap up the ignore file is, although we set it on the server to obey the .p4 ignore file, it's also important that we do it here on the client side. If we don't, it won't be respected, because your individual machine has to have that environmental variable set as well. So let's take care of that really quick. So we do have whatever you named it. P4 ignore is what I named mine, but whatever you named yours, go up here to the root of your workspace, right click on it, and then select open command window here. You're going to get a command prompt, and we are in that folder structure there. And just like we did on the server settings, just go p4 set p4 ignore in all capital letters, because it is an environmental variable. Hit equal and then .p4 ignore. Hit enter. There we go. It's set. So just verify p4 set. And there we go. We see the system environment variables there. So go ahead and exit. And now we should be set. All right. So now what you need to do is go ahead and locate all your project files that you want to add to the depot. When you get them, go ahead and cut them, copy them, whatever you want to do with them. I'm going to go ahead and take my files here and I'm going to cut them. Then I'm going to come out here to my root directory or of my workspace, which is where we have the p4 ignore file. And I am just going to right click and I'm going to paste all my files in here. I don't have the project name. You'll notice that if we go back here, I still have the higher folder called, which is the name of the original project, right? We go in here. I just took all the files from inside of there. Right, so that's all you need. All we need is the files, because we already got this Jesse Evo core that is essentially the same thing. We don't want to create too many structures in here. If you want so many directories, you can if you want, but you don't need to. So now we have all our files in there. So let's go ahead and get rid of that. And then come in here and now you see they're not here. So where are they? Go ahead and hit refresh and you're going to see everything in here. So now we have all of this files in here. Now, if we hit right click on the root of the workspace and let's go mark for add, it's going to ask which change list you want to include it on. We're going to include it on the default. Go ahead and select OK. And if you got a big project that you're adding, this may take a little while, but if it's a new project, just like the one I'm adding now, it shouldn't take too long. And here we go. We get this first pop-up that gives us a warning. The following files were not marked for add since they are ignored. If we go through this list, you can just verify everything that we want to ignore has actually been ignored. And once you get through all of this, then you can hit OK. But I don't want to be warned every time I want to add files in here. So I'm just going to go do not warn me about ignored files. I've got them set there for a reason and select OK. And then once you're done, you're going to see down here 551 files opened for add. So we get all these pluses here, plus and a lock, and that tells you that all these files are marked for add. So if we go in here and we just double check, you can see the .sln is a file we don't want to version control. Same thing with .vsconfig. And we go up here to our saved, auto saved. You can see none of this is marked for add. So that is good news. We don't want any of the intermediate file. So we just come in here, you can scroll through it, you can do whatever you need to do, but we should have verified it when we were going through the pop-up warning. And now we can submit all this to the depot. So go ahead and scroll all the way up and make sure you're at the very top. If you select one file and you hit submit, that's the only file you're going to submit. Select the default change list or whatever the name of your change list is. Click submit. It wants you to write a description. When you've got your description, go ahead and click submit. All right, since that was our initial upload, there was a lot of files that had to upload, so it took a little bit of time. But once you get that done, it shouldn't be that bad unless you're not being good about submitting your changes. You should submit your changes every time you're done working on something. Submit your changes, even if you're not working on a team. That's going to be the best course of action. Make sure you save all your stuff. You hit Control S or Control Shift S in Unreal or wherever you're working on a regular basis to save your stuff. Just make sure when you walk away from the computer, you don't want something to happen. Next time you turn it on, you get a blue screen of death, anything like that. You don't want that to happen, to lose all your stuff. You throw it on the server and you've got everything in the back. So now we look here and we're in our workspace view. Everything is still there. You can see the obvious difference. But if we come over here to the Depot tab, and now you can see all those files aren't there, only the ones that were submitted. So that is perfect. That is exactly what we wanted to do. So now that we have our project into our main stream, let's go ahead and create some branching streams. I'm going to come up here and select stream graph. If you don't have this tab selected, remember you can come over here to the plus icon, drop it down, and you will find stream graph in here. If you don't find it, that means you haven't created any streams yet, which means you haven't progressed like I have in this video. So get caught up and select your stream graph. On the left-hand side here, you can see we've got the main, got the check mark next to it. And you can see here, this little icon, this little like monitor television icon in the main stream. That means that is the current stream that you're working in, which you can also tell if you come over here to your Workspaces tab. You can see we are currently working in EvoCore main, which is this one right here. There are three main types of streams that you can have. There's actually 5 overall, but 3 primary that you're going to use for your day-to-day operations. You've got your mainline stream right here, which this is going to be the main code line for your entire project. That doesn't mean it is going to be the most stable, but it is the one that everything works on. This is the primary task that everything will merge from. Next, you have your development stream. This is what I used for my primary development. You can organize your streams and your branching any way that you really want. It's up to you. Just be consistent with it as you move through. But what I usually like to do is I like to create a development branch, and then I work in that development branch. When I feel fairly confident that the codes, or I create a new feature, anything like that, when I feel it's ready to be merged up to the main line, then I will send all the code back up to the main line. These streams are usually used for the long-term project and to program your major new features. You can have multiple different branches coming off of any other stream that you want. So you can have multiple development streams coming off of here. In cases you might want that, you might want to create a development branch that is specific for environment artists, the other one for your programmers, however you want to do it. Generally speaking, I'm only going to end up doing one development branch and then a bunch of release branches as you go through. And with that, the next one is your release stream. What this is generally for, this is going to be your streams that your projects that you intend to release out to the public. These are going to be your more stable streams that you have, or your more stable code that you have for release. Generally, you're not going to work in your release streams. You can, however, only time you really want to is if you're in a release stream and you're fixing some bugs in that particular release, then you can go ahead and work in there. By default, your main stream isn't going to be able to merge into your release streams. However, your release streams can copy itself back down into your main branch, and then your main branch can copy back down to development. So if you've got, as I said, bug fixes that you're fixing up in your release streams, you can merge them or copy them all the way back down into necessary branches. So let's go ahead and create first one, and I'll show you what I mean. Let's go ahead and right click on the main. You're going to come down here. You're going to see create new stream from main. Go ahead and select that. Window's going to pop up here, and it's going to give you the option to give it a name. I'm just going to call it dev. If you're going to have multiple development streams, then name it however you want, more applicable name if you want. You can always come back and change the name a little bit later if you want. I'm just going to name mine dev for now. You come down here, the stream type, you can see it's already defaulted to development because I right clicked on the main streamline. So there's only really one of two choices you're going to have off of this, which is your development or your release. But if we select this, you're going to see here, we've got the option for a mainline stream, development, release, and then the least two that you will most likely never use, but they're there and you can read up on it on your own if you want to. But the primary three you're going to have here are these three. So I'm going to select development, and you can see down here the change propagation. The way this works is the parent, we've got the main line, that's the main that we have with the check mark here. By default, it's going to go to the parent, which means it's going to allow copies to the parent stream. So anything we're doing here in the development stream, we're going to have the ability to send it back up into the main stream or to its parent. And the reason why it's called the parent instead of the mainstream, like I said, you can have multiple development branches, one right off of the other. You can have development as a child to a development stream. Might get a little confusing if you continue to do it that way, but you are allowed to do that. And then we got here from parent, which means if we have any changes in the mainstream, for example, where we copied bug changes down from a release stream into the mainstream, then we're going to have the ability to merge those changes down into the development stream. Now, if we come up here and just as an example, if we were to select release, you're going to see by default, all we can do is allow merges to the parent stream, which means we're only going to be able to take whatever we have from the release stream and send it down into the main line. We're not going to have the ability to move it up. Now you can change this, but generally that's not going to be the preferred method because you don't want your main line updating your release stream because your release streams are your more stable. You're only working in release streams when you're fixing bugs or other minor tweaks that you need for that particular release. And over the course of a project, you're going to end up having multiple release branches as you move through. So just always stay active in the most current release branch that you have when you're working with releases. But I'm going to switch back to the development branch. Now, if you come down here, we got the parent stream because we right clicked on the main stream here on the right hand side. It's already populated to main, but if it wasn't, or if you wanted to choose a different one, click the browse button there, and then you'll find all the list of the different streams and projects that you have listed in here. And then the rest of it, don't really worry about that. You got the parent view location that created its name from the stream name up here, and then you can give it a description if you want. So again, if you're running multiple development streams or anything like that, just be specific here in the description so you have that. And then lastly, you get a couple options here to create a workspace to use with the stream. I'm going to keep this defaulted to no. For every stream that you work in, you need to have a workspace dedicated, well, not necessarily dedicated, but you need to have a workspace for a stream if you're going to work into it. So I'm going to leave this as false. I'll show you why in just a couple minutes. And then here you have branch files from the parent on stream creation, means it's going to automatically copy everything we need from the main branch down into the new development branch. I'm going to leave that false for now. I'm going to show you how to do that individually. So go ahead and select OK. And once it's done, you're going to see it pop up here. And if we come over here now and you select the down arrow, you can see the development here. If I unselect that and select apply, then you're not going to see it. With it back in view, now you're going to see we got this green arrow pointing down and this grayed out or black one pointing upwards. What this means, if you see green like this, that means there are changes in the main branch that the development doesn't have. Well, that one's simple right at this point because we just updated or we just created this and we did not populate it with the project files. So all the project files from here need to be dropped down into the development branch. So now in order for us to populate the development stream with the main branch, there's a couple ways you could do it, but what I advise is just double click on the stream and then you're going to get this little pop-up window. It's going to tell you the stream development and that's going to tell you merge changes down or nothing to copy up. If this was green, it would say copy changes right there, but it doesn't. And then you have the option to work in the stream as well. But what we want to do is we want to go ahead and merge it. So select merge. And then you're going to get this little pop-up warning that tells you you must switch to your workspace in order to work in the stream development or stream dev as we called it. And then it tells you you need to create a new workspace. So you have the option to create a new workspace here, but I'm going to show you how to go ahead and change your current workspace so that you can use it on multiple streams. So go ahead and select cancel. As stated previously, with the free version of Perforce, you're allowed 5 users as well as 20 workspaces before you need a license. So if you're working by yourself, I wouldn't worry too much about reusing your workspaces. Just create what you need and move forward. If you're working on a team, then you might have to start rationing it down a little bit. So on the free license, if you have 5 people working, that means everybody can have a total of 4 workspaces, which should still be plenty unless you're working on multiple workstations and you just happen to need the different workspaces. But generally speaking, I only have 2. I'll keep 2 for myself. I have a development one and then a main branch one. Another one that might come in handy is, say, for releases, if you're going to be working in releases down the road. So really 3 per person, that should be more than sufficient. However, there are going to be times when you may want to reuse your current workspace, and that's perfectly fine. There's just a few caveats that you'll need to keep in mind when doing so. So let me go ahead and show you how to update your current workspace. So if you come up here and select the plus icon, I'm going to go into the workspace view. Within the workspaces view, you're going to get everybody's workspace that is currently on this server or in this repository. So what you need to do is find the workspace that you want, right click on it and go down to edit workspace. So in here, what we need to do is just go to the stream, and just clicking the drop down box isn't going to do anything for us. It never really does. Just select browse. And then in here, you're going to see the main branch, which is the one we're currently working in. And then you're going to see the development branch, and it's going to show you the parent is the main, type is development. And if we scroll over, it's going to give you the description over here. So I'm going to choose development. Select OK. So now as I do this, if you look over here on the left hand side, you're going to see some of this start to change. So go ahead and select apply. It's going to give you the warning. Do you want to get the latest versions of all files in this workspace? Go ahead and select yes. That just means since there's nothing in that branch, it's going to delete everything that isn't currently in the development workspace. Select OK. And you could do automatically get all revisions and you won't get that pop up, but I'm going to select OK. So now you're going to see there's still files behind, but they aren't the main project files. These are all the files that we chose to ignore that are currently in my projects folder. So what you're going to need to do, if you're going to use this, what I suggest you do is you delete all of this information. Remember, we're ignoring most of this because they're already created for you every time you open the project, like everything within the intermediate folder. That's all created for you every time you open up the project. So generally speaking, all of this can go ahead and be deleted, and it's going to be auto-generated for you when you open the project back up or build it, anything like that. Open up your project within your IDE. If you're doing C++, it's not that big of a deal. So just delete it all. You can right click on here and go show in Project Explorer, and then there you go. You get all those files. So now you can go in here and you can delete all those if you want to reuse it, because you don't want any of these to conflict with the new branch. Because of the way I like to operate within Perforce, what I'm going to do is I generally only need the development workspace. If I ever need to switch, I actually don't need to delete because I'm not going to be working in the main branch. I'm just need to switch to it when I'm updating the current branch or when I'm copying files into the current branch. So if I have to come into main in order to copy files up, then that's fine. I will switch my files and there won't be any need to delete it because nothing's going to get moved up from your workspace. It gets moved up from the repository or the stream here under dev. So there's no need to really delete those. The only other time I'll probably create a second workspace will be when I'm doing releases, and I'll have a dedicated release one. But I'm not too worried about it for now. What I'm going to go ahead and do, I'm going to come back in here to Workspaces, and I'm going to go into this file really quick, and I'm just going to delete the folders that I don't need. Again, I'm going to leave the idea, the VS, the binary. I'm just going to delete content, derived data cache, intermediate, and saved. The rest of them I'm going to go ahead and leave simply because this is a brand new project and I really haven't done anything. So any of these files in here, I'm not too worried about. I'm going to delete these. They will definitely be regenerated. Some of these other ones may or may not be, especially up here if you're using Writer. That's what the .idea, the .idea folder is about. It's all about Writer. So you may not ever even see that unless you're using Writer. VS is obviously Visual Studios. So I'm going to go ahead and close this out. And if we refresh this, you're going to see that those folders are now gone. So I'm currently working in the development stream. So if I come over here, you can see in the stream graph, I'm working in development. So now if you double click on the development stream, we got merge changes here. So go ahead and select merge changes. You're going to get this pop-up window here. This may or may not be expanded for you. If it's not, go ahead and expand the options here. So from top to bottom, we got merge method, stream to stream. That's one we want. Source stream will be from our main stream, and the target stream will be our development stream. So from main down to development. Now in options here, you get several choices here. You can add the files to the pending change list, or you can have it automatically submit after resolving. I prefer to leave it as add files to the pending change list. The most important thing you're going to want to do though is go ahead and select the automatically resolve files after merging. If you don't auto resolve, you're going to end up getting a bunch of what might be scary looking things in your change list where you have to individually resolve all the different files. Don't worry about that. Let it do it for you. You can do safe automatic resolve with no merging, or an automatic resolve and allow merging. I suggest keeping it as the safe automatic, because if there is another issue, then it will do it without merging it. Hence the word safe. So just leave it as a safe. You could choose a pending change list if you want and create a new one. I'm just going to leave it as default, and you can't set a description to a default. Go ahead and select merge. And this is going to go ahead, and this is going to probably take a minute, especially since it's a brand new stream being populated with all the files. It's going to take a minute to just give it time and hit merge. You'll see it working here as it's resolving the files. As long as this is sitting here thinking, just go ahead and be patient. So now that it's finished, if you come up here to the pending change list, and you're going to see everything in here that we've done. Had you not automatically resolved, you're going to see a bunch of X's and question marks. It wants you to delete files. You can see right here, it says 425 files open for delete. It did its own deletion thing within its own files. Don't worry about it. That's what I was saying. Just go ahead and have it automatically resolve. You may or may not have to automatically resolve every time you do any merges. I would just always leave it ticked whenever you're doing it, just because, just let it do its thing. But you're going to see here, we got these little wrench or spanner, whatever you want to call it, and it tells you it's marked for branch in default change list. So just make sure your change list is highlighted, and then go ahead and select submit. Give it a description. Try to be as descriptive as possible. And then once you're satisfied with that, go ahead and select submit. And there we go. You can see our workspace is now updated here. We've got everything. We've got all our files in here. And if you come back over here to the depot tab, you can see where in the main branch or the main stream, you can see these little dotted lines around the files. It's around all the files. That means that those are files outside of this current stream. So if we open up the dev stream, you come in here and you can see we've got the solid file with the green icon on it because we don't have it checked out. So there we go. We're currently working in the dev stream. Come over here to workspace again. All of our files here. This is the one we're working in. Now, if we come back here to the stream graph, you can see that green arrow is now gone. We haven't done any work in our development branch, so now we can merge it back into the main branch there. And again, just to reiterate, you can have as many development branches as you want off of this main branch. You can have a development branch off of this development branch if you so choose. It's really up to you and how you want to structure your source control. So if you were to do like a second development off of the branch, do one, say, for example, environment art or something like that, where whoever is working on environment art, they can work from that stream, and then your other one can be for programming or development, whatever you want to do, and they will have their own iteration of the stream. So you can actually work outside of the stream. So your environment artist can work in the development stream over here and they can check out files without interfering you checking out files here in your development stream. Keep in mind that by doing that, when that gets populated back up into the main branch, you may run into conflicts and you have to resolve those conflicts. So if your environment artists are doing work on files that you also are doing work in, then when those come up, you're going to have to decide which version to accept, the one from your environment artists or the one from the developers. And by choosing one over the other, it could be where you lose code or code is going to get broken. So just keep that in mind. So whoever's working in, say, your environment artist, that they're not changing any code, that they're just going in and putting models, or they're, doing what they need to do for environmental artists. And developers, they're just working on the code. So as long as your team understands its role in each of its structures in each of its streams, then you should be fine. And really, you can structure these in such a way between your workspaces and your development streams and your administrative tasks, which we're going to go over in just a minute. You can really kind of limit people to exactly what they can or cannot have access to. So with that, I would suggest for small projects, unless you're working on a huge team beyond your 5 people working on your free license. I would suggest keeping it as simple as possible. Have one development branch and one main branch, and then multiple release branches as you get lucky enough to release your project. All right, just leave it at that and call it good, so that way you don't have any conflicts. So to create user accounts, come up here to Tools, select Administration, and then when the administration window opens up, now mind you, you have to be logged in as the administrator or the super user in order to do this. But on this home screen here, you're going to get a lot of information here related to your system, your servers. It shows you how much disk space you have available, etc., etc. Licenses. If we had a license file from Perforce, then it would show it here. It doesn't show the 5 free licenses, so you have to kind of keep track of it yourself. And security level, we got 3. It's defaulted to 3 is the highest. You can set it to whichever security level you want by coming up to administration, and I think just right here under password security level. So we're going to leave it as 3 for right now. So we're going to create a new user. So go over to the users and groups, and you're going to see the only one listed here is me. Let's go ahead and select the plus tab here, and you're going to get the pop-up window, and let's go ahead and create a user. This is going to be the username. I'm just going to call it test. It asks for an email. You can't proceed without putting in an email. It depends on what you want to do with your users. You can force them to give you a legit email, or it doesn't really matter. So test@test.com. We'll call this test account, and then you can give it a temporary password or any password you want if you want right here. I suggest not worrying about that. Go to make sure standard is selected and click apply, and there we go. It created the account. It puts in here the data was modified and all the permissions for that. So go ahead and select OK. Now you're going to see the name test right here in your users and groups. So let's go ahead and give this user some permissions. Go ahead and select the permissions tab now, and in here you have the list of access levels for each individual user. By default, it gives every user, we get 2 choices here. You get user or group. We're defined as user, so anybody as a user, doesn't matter what your name is. Star is a wildcard, same thing with your host. It gives permission to write to any and every folder or file or every depot. So if we had 10 depots here, every user is going to be able to see every single depot that we have. Now, if you're a solo dev and nobody else is working in here, then ultimately that's all you want. But in that case, you're going to most likely be the super user, which, as we said before, is bad practice. But either way, this gives every user that is not the super user access to see everything. You may or may not want to do that. Like we mentioned in the last segment, is that you may want to have your environmental artists only use a specific depot. Then you could do that as well. Or, for example, you may not want everybody to access your main branch. You want everybody to work in the development branch, but you don't want them uploading files into the main branch or merging anything. You want to make sure that only things that should be merged into the main branch are actually merged into the main branch. Now you can see here, it shows the different depots that we have here and the permissions used for the user you have selected. So this is currently the depots that the user test has access to, but this doesn't show the streams within the depot. So as we make changes, you're going to actually see this go away, but I'll show you that this actually works. And you can check groups and depot tree, but we'll just stick with the user tree right here. So right now, if you're going to have multiple people on here, I recommend getting rid of this write access level so they can see anything and everything. You may or may not want that. If you don't want that, fine. Or if you don't care, then go ahead, leave it. Not a big deal. However, I'm going to change for test, and at least just to show you guys how to do this, we're going to change this. If you're going to make any alterations, I suggest making it to this first, and then you can always add another setting here by clicking the insert line. You can create different permissions, and right here, if we select this, you can see all the different type of permissions you could do. Your primary ones you're going to use are read, open, write, admin, and super. Super being the highest. Anything below this is just kind of tiered levels of permissions. Read is, well, just that you can read the files, but you can't open them. Open means you can open them, but you can't actually write to them. Write means you can pretty much do whatever you want. And then admin, well, that allows you to do administrative tasks on the server. So I'm going to put this as right for now, user group, and the name, we're going to change this name to test host. We don't care about the host. Now, let's say we only only want the test user to see the development stream of our EvaCore depot. So go ahead and get rid of these three dots. We're going to go EvaCore /dev/ so they can see anything after the development branch. Go ahead and click Save Edits. All right, so now we did that. Let's go ahead now and let's open up the user that we just created. And by doing this, the first time somebody opens, even though we didn't create a password for the user, the first time they go to open the account, it will ask them to create a secure password. So I'm going to select this. I'm going to go connections, open connection. It's going to pop in here, and we got test user. If this isn't already popular, it's probably going to have your username. Go ahead and put test. We don't have a workspace for it yet, so just go ahead and select OK. There we go. It pops up. It asks for a password. Hit OK, and now it pops open, and you can see that we can only see the development branch. Now, yes, you can see the main here, but that's because the way this stream graph goes, it tells you this is a child of the main stream. So you're going to see it here, but you can't see it and you can't access the main branch here. So let's go ahead and make another alteration, and let me show you how this goes. So if we open up the administrative panel again, in here we got write, and without a workspace, I'm not going to be able to demonstrate the difference between open, read, and write. Just assume you know what it means because it's pretty self-explanatory. If we come back in here and we select this and we get rid of dev and we go main, hit enter, save your edits, and then we come back out here to the test connection and just refresh this. There we go. Now we have access to main, and we don't even know that the dev branch exists because we don't have permissions to it, and it's a child of this. So all we see is a main. So if there's any other streams attached to this main, whether it's, the release streams or the dev streams, you won't be able to see them because you weren't given permission for that. So what if we want to give them the ability to see main, but not write to it? So we change this. Now we go, you can read from main. All right, now let's add another permission here. We're going to write user test, and then in here we'll go / EvaCore / dev / ... There we go. So now we have permission to write to the development branch and read the main branch. So this way you can see what's in the main branch, and you could probably even do some diff against it if you want to, but you're not going to be able to make any merges into the main branch, preserving the main branch for only administrators. So go ahead and save edits. And if we come back out here to our test connection and hit refresh, there we go. We can see them. And while I can't demonstrate it because I don't have a workspace available to this test user, you'll just have to trust the fact that I can make changes and check out files from the dev, but I cannot do anything other than read the files within here. So that's just about going to wrap it up here for the administrative tasks as an administrative user within Perforce. If you guys have any questions, go ahead and leave me comments down below. Come on over, join the Discord. If there's more information that you would like to get, another video showing other tasks that you could do as an administrator, then go ahead and let me know. Leave comments down below and we can take a consensus of that. Or you can come on over to the Discord, as I said, and join us over there and talk to me about it. And I'll do what I can to help, even if we don't end up doing a second video. I hope you guys enjoyed this. If you did, please do me a favor, go down and hit that like button. And until the next episode, peace.